This is the BG Sports Show presented by Sports Radio America. I'm your host, Baxter Colburn. Welcome to the program. A Monday edition of the BG Sports Show rolling on. Oh man, it's the second week of the show being back after being off for about a month and a half, so it is great to be back. We've got a lot of great things in store for you today. A couple different interviews. We'll be rejoined again by Anthony Nachreiner from 1560 The Fan down in Melbourne, Florida, a little bit later on in the program. Bleacher Report's David Kenyon will be joining us as well, as he does every Monday and Thursday. Concordia, Wisconsin's very own Jayda Hoerrs will be joining us as well to talk about her college hockey season and how things ended up and what the plans are for the future as well. And in just a moment, we have a very special interview, but we'll get to that in just a second, so I'm going to leave you hanging out for just a second. But we want to take a moment to remind all of you that if you want to listen to the BG Sports Show, you can find it live here on Spreaker.com from 1 to 2 p.m. Central Time on Spreaker.com. You can also find it on Sports Radio America from 4 to 6 p.m. Central Time on Mondays and Thursdays. And you can also get it on demand anytime you want to on iTunes, iHeartRadio, and on Spreaker.com as well. For those of you that love the social media world, you can go and like the BG Sports Show by going to Facebook and typing in the BG Sports Show in the search bar. And you can head over to Twitter as well and find the show at BG Sports Show. And you can follow myself at Baxter Colburn. The Q is silent. Just kidding. There's no Q. It's BAXTERCOLBURN. If you ever want to get at the show, you can shoot us an email at bgsportshow@gmail.com as well. Apologies throughout the show. I think I'm on the brink of becoming sick. My wife is homesick today, unfortunately, so I'm hoping I avoid it. I've already had my full glass of orange juice today, and I've been drinking water, so it could also be the fact that I worked 3 extra overnight shifts this last weekend as well, so that might have something to do with it. But either way, when the sports world is relevant and I have the opportunity to talk to so many great people, it just kind of revitalizes me and energizes me. So with that being said, it's time to bring in our first guest. So the best way to describe the person I'm about to bring into is, number one, he's an author, but he is also one of those people that has seen a lot. But he's also a person that is very outgoing. He seems to know the baseball world better than most anybody that I've met in a long time. He's got a new book out called Stars and Strikes, and we are joined on the program now by author Dan Epstein. Welcome to the show, sir. How are you?
I'm good, Baxter. How you doing, man? Well, actually, I've heard how you're doing, and I hope you feel better.
Well, thank you. No, I appreciate it. Yeah, like I said, I got my orange juice in. I got my water bottle here next to me, so trying to keep it all together this morning.
I hear you.
Well, Dan, we're excited to talk to you about your new book that's coming out, Stars and Strikes. So before we dive into everything about the book, can you give people a little bit of background about who you are and where you came from?
Yeah, I guess I have seen a lot of your introduction is on the money. I currently live in Chicago. I'm a writer. I write for Rolling Stone and Guitar World and Revolver, mostly music stuff, although I do some baseball coverage as well for Rolling Stone. I've written for a whole bunch of other publications over the years. I've written a book before this one called Big Hair and Plastic Grass, which covered the 70s as a whole as far as baseball and American culture were concerned. And this new book, Stars and Strikes, is specifically zeroes in on 1976, which was a very tumultuous and important year, both in baseball and in American popular culture, which tends to get overlooked for various reasons. So
yeah.
I felt it needed to be celebrated, and so I wrote Stars and Strikes.
Absolutely, yeah. You talk about 1976. You were 10 years old in 1976, so you could say that you were at the height of your curiosity for the sports world. And after reading segments from this book and doing a little bit of research and seeing what other people have thought about the book as well, it is interesting. And I guess maybe just because I'm a little bit younger guy than you are, I didn't realize how pivotal the 1976 baseball year was. And one of the favorite things that I've read and seen about the things that you put in your book pertains to the Chicago White Sox and a uniform change they had that year. Do you mind elaborating a little bit?
Yes. Well, 1976 is the year that Bill Veeck comes back and buys the Chicago White Sox for the second time, and in doing so keeps the franchise in Chicago. There was talk that they were going to be sold and moved elsewhere, and he takes over a team that's pretty terrible. So in order to inject more excitement into the ballpark, get people to come down and see the White Sox, even though they're awful, he devises all kinds of promotions and gimmicks, as Bill Veeck was known to do. And perhaps the most infamous, at least as far as 1976 was concerned, was he completely redesigned the Chicago White Sox outfit so that they were wearing these kind of almost like late 19th century tunics with collars on the jerseys.
Yep.
And three different kinds of pants. There were sort of like form-fitting, almost leggings, and then there are these ones that came just down to the ankles, which they called the clam diggers, and then the most legendary, which they only wore for 3 games, but which have seared the imagination of Chicago White Sox fans everywhere, were the shorts. They actually wore short pants for 3 games during the 1976 season.
And it's just incredible to see that.
Major League team has ever done that.
Do you think that it was just because of kind of the demands that the game does put on your body with all the diving and sliding and stuff that they wanted the longer pants, or was just wearing shorts in general just an awful idea from a uniform perspective?
Well, I think a lot of the players just felt they looked silly.
Sure.
And, they looked like a softball team. And I mean, there was the issue of sliding, although one of my favorite little-known factoids about 1976 is that the Chicago White Sox were 8 for 8 in stolen base attempts while wearing short pants.
Hey, wow, look at that. That's probably a fun fact that not a lot of folks know. I mean, you think about it. I mean, I've played, pickup baseball and stuff before, and if I'm not wearing long pants, it's very rare that you're going to get me to slide into a base, regardless if I'm on grass or on the normal, baseball clay.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I can understand a major leaguer not wanting to do it, but hey, they did it 100% of the time, so it had to have been working a little bit. So maybe they were able to run faster.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say maybe they were able to run a little bit faster too because of that, not having to worry about it since they were just shorts.
Well, that I think was part of the theory. It was lighter weight. They actually wore them in August, so it thought like, well, it would be cooler out there, and they weren't wearing the long polyester pants that everybody else was wearing. So it might have made a difference there to some degree. And Bill Veeck always said that really when you're sliding, you should be sliding on your hip, not your leg anyway.
True.
So
very true. I mean, that's the technical way to do it, but it doesn't always work out that way as we know.
No, it doesn't.
Absolutely. Talking with author Dan Epstein here on the BG Sports Show. His new book, Stars and Strikes. Well, Dan, one of the other things, as you know from the 1976 year, was the expansion, and new franchises came out in Seattle and Toronto. Talk a little bit about how pivotal those were for the growth of the game.
Yeah, well, I mean, 76 is the year that those franchises are awarded. You don't get baseball played again in Seattle or in Toronto until the 77 season.
Yep.
But in 76, I mean, that there is, I guess the Toronto team comes into play when the owner of the San Francisco Giants tries to sell the Giants to a Toronto organization that was going to move the team to Toronto. And this is in early 76, and the San Francisco's mayor, George Moscone, has to step in and get a court order to keep the team in the city. And meanwhile, there's up in Seattle, the city of Seattle is actually suing Major League Baseball over the removal of the Seattle Pilots after the 69 season under some very sketchy circumstances, which, as you read in my book, involved future baseball commissioner Bud Selig.
Okay, sure.
And some very, very underhanded dealings on his part that people conveniently forget. And it was that whole thing was so shady that the court actually awarded the city of Seattle a new major league franchise. This is the only time in history that a city has been able to successfully sue Major League Baseball for a new ball club.
Wow.
And so then what happens is there's, as we know, the two teams were added to the American League, and the American League East for Toronto and American League West for Seattle. But for a while there in '76, there's a lot of controversy over this because the National League wants a Toronto team so it can have a rivalry with the Montreal Expos.
Sure, yep.
But then that would have meant 13 teams in both leagues, and most people don't know this, but there was a very serious discussion of inaugurating interleague play beginning in the 1977 season.
Wow,
because
okay.
there was the possibility of the National League taking the Toronto team instead of the American League.
Very interesting. Well, one of the things I'm just as a side note here, curious. Do you think we're going to see any more expansion teams in Major League Baseball now at all? I mean, I know it's been a while since we've had a new team, but we hear about all these other franchises, especially, I mean, Major League Soccer right now is expanding like crazy, but in the Houston Texans, I guess, are the newest for the NFL, but you haven't really heard of any expansion teams in a while for the NBA or even for MLB as well. Do you think we might see any more expansion baseball teams?
Oh yeah. I think in the next 5 years we'll see. See
really?
more.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's a really strong movement afoot to bring baseball back to Montreal. Now, whether that means via an expansion team or moving another team there remains to be seen. But I think there are enough. I think there are enough other markets that could handle a major league team at this point. Maybe they don't have the facilities yet, but I think. I definitely see it as a possibility.
Fantastic. Well, I got to ask you, like I ask all the other authors that I've had on the show, what inspired you to write this book? I know that sometimes that can be a long-winded answer, but I mean, if you had to narrow it down, obviously it's very important after reading your bio and reading everything that you've had in this book. The year 1976 was a very pivotal year in your life, but also in America's life as well. I mean, it was the 200th birthday of our freedom. Jimmy Carter was the president now, but what specifically for you, Dan, drove you to want to write this book?
Well, it was a couple of things. One is that, yes, 1976 was the year I fell in love with baseball, and Mark the Bird Fidrich was my hero.
Sure.
And I was completely caught up in the whole excitement of the bicentennial celebration. So I kind of wanted to go back and relive that, researching the book, but also just that there were so many changes happening, not just in the game, but in music, in film, the fads of the time, Pong and CB radio, which, both of which we've entirely forgotten about, but were an incredible amount of fun at the time.
Yes.
So it was a really rich year, and there are so many characters in baseball that year, both on the field and in the owners' boxes, and it goes much deeper than the World Series. So many seasons are defined by the World Series. The 1976 World Series was not a great one unless you were a Reds fan.
Yes,
because they just crushed the Yankees 4-0, and there was really no contest or excitement there. But I just felt like this was a year that, certainly from an economic standpoint, everything that happened in 1976 with the reserve clause being knocked down and full-scale free agency coming in for the first time. We're still dealing with the ramifications of that to this day. So I just, and of course now we're at the 40th anniversary of all that.
Yep,
so
exactly.
It seems like a good time to look back.
Exactly, and that's the type of book that I think people enjoy too, because years like this, as crazy as they were, I don't feel like we've seen a lot like this in recent history.
Yeah, absolutely, and so many things. Just in terms of music, disco and punk rock and hip hop, like all these things are starting to build. Disco kind of breaks into the mainstream in 1976, but punk rock is still, hasn't really broken through, or the new wave hasn't happened yet. But it was a really exciting time to be alive. But it's also a really exciting year to go back and just kind of immerse yourself in, and that's what I really wanted Stars and Stripes to be, was like a full-on time capsule that you could, travel back 40 years with.
Absolutely, yeah, and I'm sure there's many people similar to yourself that enjoyed baseball in its peak maybe in the 70s and 80s and really enjoyed seeing it shape the way, America is nowadays. So, all right, Dan, well, before we let you go, I got to ask you about something that I loved doing when I was a kid was collecting baseball and football cards. There was something interesting with Topps back in 1976. What exactly was that?
Well, you mean the traded cards?
Yes. Yeah, I've never heard of those before. What exactly are those?
They had a series, and actually it wasn't just in 76. They also did it in 74.
Okay.
And I think maybe one or two other years, where basically players that had been traded in the off season, and the trades had already gone through, but the Tops didn't have a picture of the player in their new uniform, would have an artist basically paint over a picture of the player, put it with a new uniform on it, and then there would be a special traded card with, my favorite example is the Oscar Gamble 1976 Topps traded card, where he's wearing this gigantic afro, and it has him on the Yankees because they just obtained him in a trade, but he would have to cut his hair before he actually, before Steinbrenner and Billy Martin would actually let him don the pinstripes. But the card has him in pinstripes, really poorly rendered, and this gigantic cap that, it looks like you could park a car in, that's like really airbrushed in a way that makes it look almost like velvet, and then there's a little strip across the bottom that says "Yankees take a gamble on Oscar," which to me that is my favorite baseball card ever made. It's worth about $2 on eBay in great condition. But
I was going to say, do you own a copy of that card?
I own several, actually.
Very nice. Awesome. Well, Dan, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day. Before we let you go, where can people find your work, not only for this new book, but also where they can interact with you on social media as well?
Okay. Well, you can find Stars and Strikes on Amazon.com or Barnes & Noble's website, and pretty much any bookstore where fine sports books are sold will, if they don't carry it, they will special order it for you. But you can also find me on Twitter at Big Hair Plasgrass, Plasgras, and my website is www.bighairplasticgrass.com.
Fantastic. Dan Epstein, a very big pleasure, sir, to talk with you. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your schedule today.
Oh, Baxter, it was a lot of fun, man. Thanks for having me.
We'll have to do it again sometime. All right, we are going to run to a commercial. When we come back, David Kenyon of Bleacher Report will be here to chat about the upcoming NFL Combine and what you can expect from some of the up-and-coming players. We'll be right back. You're listening to the BG Sports Show. Welcome back to the BG Sports Show presented by Sports Radio America. I'm your host, Baxter Colburn. Just had the distinct opportunity to speak with author Dan Epstein. His new book, Stars and Strikes, coming out soon. You can find it on Amazon and at Barnes & Noble as well. And now we get to change gears a little bit and bring in Bleacher Report's finest, David Kenyon, to talk about so many different things. But today, we're going to be talking about the NFL Combine. Welcome to the show, David.
Well, thank you. I'm excited to talk about the craziness that's about to happen.
Yeah, so for those that don't understand, I guess, the significance of it, what does the NFL Combine do? If you can give us kind of a 101 for the new NFL fans that are out there, if there are any.
Well, the NFL Combine is chance for college prospects to showcase their football talents, but in a very official setting. Every NFL team has multiple personnel groups really there to watch, chart, just observe in general. They'll do on-field drills, testing. They'll get official measurements. So, like, you get Ty Montgomery, who's listed at 6'2" at Stanford, and then goes to the combine, and we find out he's 5'11".
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so useful stuff like that. And then, of course, the interviews. That's pretty important too. The teams get to meet with a bunch of these players.
That's it. Yeah, exactly. There's an opportunity for these guys to really showcase themselves. I mean, it's one thing to say, hey, I did really well in college, but when you're in front of NFL scouts, sometimes it changes exactly how you can possibly perform on the field. Yeah, the Combine starts February 26th. That's when the running backs, offensive linemen, and special teams players will begin their workouts. What are some of the big storylines going into the NFL Combine this year, David? I know that there's a quarterback from, I believe it's North Dakota State, that has a lot of people interested, but there's also some other guys that are attracting a lot of attention this year.
Yeah, it's definitely a different feel at the quarterback position this year. Last year, you had Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota, who they were fighting for the top spot, and that was pretty clear-cut that whoever didn't go 1 was going 2. And that's not really the case this year. You've got Carson Wentz out of North Dakota State. He's a late riser for those who didn't get a chance to watch him sooner, didn't know about him sooner.
Sure.
And then Jared Goff was long considered a top option heading into the season. Christian Hackenberg fell way out from his pedestal. That definitely had something to do with Bill O'Brien leaving Penn State for the Houston Texans, but that's another story for another day. And then there's Paxton Lynch, who was the darling of the regular season, shot up the draft boards when his coach Justin Fuente, they had the Memphis Tigers just playing at a great level. And then there's Connor Cook from Michigan State too, and Cook's a guy that they're questioning his maturity, his team ability to play on a team, I guess. It's such a weird thing. You get so many different narratives that don't exactly make sense sometimes.
Sure, yep.
But Cook is looked at as a selfish player or not really a leader by some because he wasn't a team captain, which there's something to be said for that. But, I mean, it's just a bunch of madness. And then Wentz is the small school product. You either love him and you had him first, that kind of thing, or, oh, there's no way a North Dakota State kid's going to be that good. Why would you draft him so early? So you get to look at these players on the same field, and so that's pretty cool.
Absolutely, yeah. I know you mentioned Jared Goff, and I know people love to talk, love to speculate, and supposedly the Cleveland Browns are already somehow related to Jared Goff, but is it just me, or do the Cleveland Browns never learn their lesson when it comes to drafting quarterbacks?
Well, it's not even just the Browns either. I think this is something that we need to have a larger conversation about. Is you look back at recent drafts where a team went after a quarterback too early, or at least they thought, and not many of those guys have panned out. Just because you need a quarterback doesn't mean you need to reach for it.
Exactly.
And then you have the case of Cleveland, who hasn't learned from that mistake. Hopefully this new front office, I guess their mindset will be different. But, I mean, we'll find out when the draft comes around.
Yep, exactly. That's the thing. There's always something that happens in the draft every year that people are like, whoa, did not see that coming, and usually didn't. Well, they say they're not surprised, but at the same time, it's usually those same teams, though, that are the ones that cause the whoa moments during the NFL draft, usually.
Yeah, and you'll get a few of those guys who they'll start popping up here at the Combine, and you're like, okay, keep an eye on this one. And he has a really good workout, and he goes from a projected 5th rounder to a projected late 3rd rounder. and suddenly draft day he gets taken in the second round. You're like, okay, I saw that guy. Or somebody's going to have a really bad combine workout for whatever reason. People start freaking out. They drop him down boards, and then he gets taken in the same place, and you're like, oh.
It's like, we missed him. It's like, how'd we miss it? It's like, well.
The hype didn't take him off NFL boards. I mean, all it takes is one.
Exactly. And you talk about the hype, and I feel like that's something that ESPN and the NFL Network and everybody that is a big entity does so well. And I think that can kind of be related to politics as well with, the presidential election that's coming up. Depending on what the media is pushing on a player at that time, do you think that has something to do with how NFL teams actually go and take a player, or do the NFL teams just not even listen to what the media is saying anymore?
There is no question that has an effect, and I have no greater example than Teddy Bridgewater,
Ooh.
Who was easily, by far, the top quarterback in that draft. He should have been taken in the first round. High.
I was going to say a lot higher, not the 32nd pick.
And, I mean, the Vikings traded back in to get him. Essentially, he was going to last until the second round.
Yeah.
That is insane.
I was just as shocked as you were when I saw that happening.
And what happened was he had a shaky pro day.
Mm-hmm.
Which, and this is the other thing about the Combine. The Combine and the pro day are maybe 5 to 10% of a total evaluation of a player. And Bridgewater fell because he had skinny knees and his hand wasn't as big as we thought. Like,
Ooh.
Are you kidding me?
That's the thing, though, because I remember hearing it. Those reports. It's like, oh, Bridgewater didn't have a good pro day, didn't have a good combine, and I was like, okay, sure, but we saw what he did in college, and he made Louisville actually relevant, which hasn't happened in a while. And I'm like, I feel like he's going to be okay. And sure enough, I mean, obviously getting used to the NFL does take a little time, so I don't want to completely take away from what Teddy does as a player, but I feel like he's done a fairly good job the first 2 seasons. He hasn't flunked out or proven that he's not supposed to be in the NFL.
Yeah, and you see his performance, and you wonder why he got missed so much. And is he Aaron Rodgers? No. Is he even? I mean, Derek Carr has emerged as a bigger threat as a passer, but
sure.
Then you have to.
He's a little bit bigger,
right? But you have to consider the scheme too. Bridgewater is doing an excellent job in Minnesota as a pro-style passer with a run-first offense,
Absolutely.
Avoiding turnovers and taking care of the offense.
Absolutely.
I mean, they were a missed field goal away from going to the second round of the playoffs.
Exactly.
He's doing a good job.
And as a second-year quarterback, that would have been obviously a great thing to have on his resume. Say, hey, I got a playoff win only, 2 years in. That's actually a lot harder to do nowadays than it was back when, Manning and Brady and some of those other guys were starting off and kind of taking over what was going on with the NFL. One other thing I want to talk to you about as we're talking here with Bleacher Report's David Kenyon on the BG Sports Show. What's the narrative with Ezekiel Elliott and Derrick Henry? Obviously, the 2 best running backs supposedly here in the NFL draft this upcoming year. Elliott and Henry, does one better than the other? Does one? Help me decide what the heck's going on with these 2 guys.
Well, Ezekiel Elliott is the pretty clear and generally undisputed number 1 prospect. He just does everything so well, from a pad level to burst to breakaway speed to pass protection, and that is huge. There are a lot of running backs who don't block very well, but Elliott is tremendous.
Yeah.
So he's pretty clear cut as the number 1. Derrick Henry, there's conflicting narratives. There's the ultra productive runner who bowls over people, and he is as much of a momentum runner as you're going to see. He's not going to destroy you and shake you at the line of scrimmage, but if he hits a hole, he's gone.
Oh, yeah, and he's got incredible breakaway speed.
Absolutely incredible breakaway speed. But he's built like not a running back. He is enormous. So there's a little bit of a concern that he's just going to be a large man who hits people hard and falls forward and, okay, thanks.
Yeah, it's like, no, I appreciate your time, but whatever.
But I think he's going to be okay. He's too talented to not. But we say that about so many people.
True. That is very true.
No, he'll be okay. As there's one team out there who's going to be confident in him. He'll be a second or third round pick, depending on need, depending on how the draft falls out.
Fair enough. All right, well, David, always a pleasure, sir. As we get closer to NFL draft time, I'd be curious to hear who you think your top 5 or top 10 prospects are. So, before we let you go, where can folks find you, find your writing, and find you on social media?
You can find me on Bleacher Report, writing college football, covering NBA and college basketball, and then you can find me on Twitter at Kenyon19_BR.
Fantastic, David. Kenyon, always a pleasure, sir.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Concordia, Wisconsin's Jayda Hoerrs will be here with us to recap her 2015 hockey season and talk a little bit about the effect of women's hockey on the great United States of America. We'll be right back with the BG Sports Show right after this. Welcome back to the BG Sports Show, presented by Sports Radio America. I'm your host, Baxter Colburn. Just a reminder for all of you that if you enjoy listening to the BG Sports Show, you can find us on Mondays and Thursdays now from 1 to 2 p.m. Central Time. And you can also find us on Sports Radio America from 4 to 6 p.m. Central Time on sportsradioamerica.com and on the TuneIn app. And you can download our podcast anytime. If you ever miss a live show, you can get it on iTunes, on iHeartRadio, and on Spreaker.com. Just type in the BG Sports Show and download it today. Well, a couple of months ago, some of you will remember that we had an opportunity to speak with Jayda Hoerrs from Concordia, Wisconsin. She is a women's hockey player, and she's been playing they'd like to call it the beautiful game, the rough game, the icy game, however exactly they describe it, for pretty much her entire life. And her final senior season is in the books now, and we are finally circling the wagons to get a chance to talk to her. We talked to her before the season, and now it kind of comes full circle. So, Jayda, welcome back to the program.
Thank you.
So your senior season just wrapped up a couple of days ago. What are the emotions going through your head right now?
It's just, I don't even think it's hit me yet. I just feel like next winter I'll be doing the same thing. I'll be, back on the ice. But I just don't think that it's hit me that I'm not going to be on the ice every day. I'm not going to be playing again next year. So.
And I asked you the question a couple months ago, too, about looking to extend your career at all. If you had any thoughts about, and when I asked you that a couple months ago, you're like, no, I'll be fine. I'll be done. I'll move into my career, whatever. Yeah. But it's all done now. And I don't want to be that guy and, rub salt in the wound, but it's, the college hockey season, the career is done. And what exactly is still going through your mind? I know when I finished, playing college soccer and football, I was looking for anything, even like a pickup game in the backyard. I'm like, I just need to play. Like, what are you going to still try to keep it alive, or what exactly is your next step?
It'll definitely still be a part of my life. I actually got an opportunity already for next hockey season to coach.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I was asked by the Ozaki youth program to coach one of the girls' teams, so U10, U14, high school even, they asked me. And
wow.
And so I'll probably be taking an opportunity with, like, the younger girls. just because it's not as much of a time commitment with, a new job. And
Sure.
So,
Okay.
Yeah, but as for playing, I'll definitely still be doing like a men's league or something like that, but definitely starting my career next year. So.
Okay, fair enough. You haven't changed your mind at all about possibly looking for a chance to play anywhere or do anything of that nature, like at a higher level at all?
It hasn't really crossed my mind. No.
Okay, because I know we mentioned the NWHL a while ago, and I know that they're still working on expanding and all that stuff too. So I just was curious, like I said, obviously I know you're still a couple days removed, so you're still letting it all set in. But your senior season this year, you played 25 total games. You had 5 total points, 3 goals, 2 assists. Of the 25 games that you played this season, Jayda, do you have any game that really sticks out to you the most, or a couple moments maybe on the ice that really will stick with you from the senior year?
I feel like one of the lowest points was when we finally knew that we were actually out of the playoffs. So that's going to be a moment in my life, or in my hockey career, where I remember, because it's the moment I knew that, like, this wasn't going to continue on, like, forever,
That is the hard part, yeah. Especially after having so much success last season as well.
Right, exactly. And we had a longer season last season, and we had a couple upsets at the end of the year. And so just not being able to get that opportunity this year was kind of tough.
I can imagine. Now, I've had the opportunity to go to a couple of your Concordia, Wisconsin games, and it's very obvious, not only the fact that you like to hit people on the ice, but it's very obvious that your team is a family. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Yes. I mean, I feel like in hockey, you spend so much more time with your teammates than any other sport, because you're there an hour before practice. You practice together, which is usually an hour and a half, and then you spend about a half an hour after practice together. And then on weekends, you travel farther than any hockey team. Excuse me. You travel longer and farther than any hockey or than any other team. So you just spend so much more time together and get to know each other so much better than I feel like other sports do. And so just like they're always there for you, and like you always have somebody to talk to. And it's amazing the closeness, and we always share a passion, which is really awesome too.
Which is fantastic. Yeah. How long have you've been playing since you were just a couple years
2.
old, right? Since you were 2?
Yeah.
Holy cow. So what is so you've played for 18 years, 19 years?
20.
Oh my goodness. Wow, okay.
Yeah.
20 years in the same sport. Yeah, I played soccer for I think about 18 or 19 years before I finally had to quote unquote retire after getting foot surgery, but it's one of those things, and I definitely share your passion for a sport that you love so much. It's so hard to walk away from it. It's so hard to, not even walking by like a park, or I'm sure for you at a rink, you see, younger kids playing, and you're like, my God, that was me, yesterday. It was like, it's crazy, but it sounds like you've made the most though of the time that you had on the ice and made a lot of exciting memories over the years.
Yes, I mean, I can't even, the game has been, like, my life, so I don't remember, a time where I haven't played, and it's really guided me towards Concordia and, where I am today, so it's awesome.
Do you have any advice for up-and-coming hockey players, especially those that are the female, that looking to say, hey, I mean, I enjoy hockey, but, I don't know if I want to get into it, or because I'm a girl, are people going to make fun of me for it?
Right. Yeah, no, because it's so, I feel like hockey, and I'm obviously biased, but I feel like it's unlike any other sport.
I would agree with you on that, yeah.
You're just in a place where and you might feel this too, Baxter, with, soccer, but, you're in a place where, you don't think about anything else. It's your escape.
You're absolutely right,
I feel like that is what kids have to think about. You have your school day, and it's just a place to go to relax and unwind and just have fun and escape actual reality. So,
yeah, I'd have to agree with you on that one for sure.
That's what it's done for me over the years, and I feel like that's what it could be for a bunch of kids. So.
Agreed. Yep. No, not to get too personal on my end, but that was when I was late high school, beginning of college. I was dealing with some, family issues and some mild depression and stuff, and being able to play soccer really helped me get away, because that would be, even if it would be midnight or even 1 a.m. sometimes, and I couldn't sleep, but I had a place that I could go play close to my house, and I would just grab my cleats and a ball and just go and, kick a ball for an hour, and that's all I needed sometimes, because that I was actually at peace and the world was quiet around me. So it's amazing to find a sport like hockey or like soccer where you can completely zero in on just that moment, and nothing else matters at that point.
Right. No, I totally agree. Yeah.
Well, fantastic. Well, Jayda, I appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for everything that you did for the game of hockey at the Division III level, and I'm sure Concordia, Wisconsin as well. So as you continue to wrap everything up here moving forward, I mean, is there team meetings? Is there team banquets? Do you get to at least still see your teammates a couple more times before the college years are over?
Yeah, I mean, I'll still see the girls at school and, like, on the weekends and stuff. And then we do have a banquet usually in, like, a month or two to, like, wrap up everything. And there's, like, senior speeches and everything like that. So
fantastic.
Yeah, I'll still get an opportunity to see the girls. And that's the most important thing. Like, the game is awesome, but, like, the relationships I've built with, like, my team is just amazing.
Exactly. Yep, and that is the most important thing at the end of the day, because the game is only temporary and friendships are forever. Absolutely. Well, Jayda, thank you so much for taking the time today. I appreciate it. Jayda Hoerrs, Concordia, Wisconsin, hockey player. It's been a pleasure, and hopefully we can chat again sometime in the near future.
For sure. Thank you, Baxter.
You're very welcome. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, 1560 The Fans, Anthony Nachreiner will be here to join us to talk a little bit about high school sports and the difference between Florida and Wisconsin when it comes to high school football and the other great sports. We'll be right back. You're listening to the BG Sports Show, presented by Sports Radio America. Welcome back to the BG Sports Show, presented by Sports Radio America. I'm your host, Baxter Colburn. Just a reminder for all of you that if you enjoy listening to the BG Sports Show, you can go and find us on Facebook by going and liking our page, the BG Sports Show, and you can go find us on Twitter at BG Sports Show. You can follow myself at Baxter Colburn. So for those of you that were listening to the show back on Thursday, you know that we chatted with the executive producer of Sports Radio 1560 The Fan in Melbourne, Florida, Anthony Nachreiner, a little bit about the NFL free agent market and everything that is swirling around with that. But now we're bringing Anthony back into the show, but we're talking about high school sports and the little bit of a difference between Florida and Wisconsin. For those of you that don't know, we're based here in the Milwaukee area. I have an opportunity to cover a lot of the high schools around the Milwaukee area through broadcasting and a lot of different things. And Anthony is now stationed down in Melbourne, and he gets to do a lot of play-by-play broadcasting as well. So welcome back to the show, Anthony. It's great to have you back on.
I appreciate it, Baxter. Always fun to come on your show, and I always appreciate the invite, man.
Not a problem at all. So high school sports is the topic of the day here, Anthony, and you and I both know that high school sports in the great Sunshine State of Florida is a whole nother level. People talk about how football is a religion, high school football is a religion in Texas. Well, football and soccer and basketball, and the list could go on and on and on in high school. In Florida is a whole nother way of life, honestly. I mean, I had the opportunity to play football and soccer in Florida in the high school level, and you also got to do some of that as well. But in your experience and everything that happens, what do you see in terms of what high school students do down there to get ready and to their dedication to a game even at such a young age?
Well, I think the biggest difference is climate. And, you know, a lot of the kids down here in the Sunshine State, they get to train for, I don't know, 10 out of 12 months a year almost. If they're doing just one sport, they get to train. They get to do their sport as often as they want, any time they want. Now, there's obviously some restriction. You know, obviously you can't have team practices in high school down here in the state of Florida, but you can go to so many different camps. This past weekend, we had the Nike opening in Orlando. Just so many different avenues for so many of these athletes to be able to go and showcase their talents. And I think that's the biggest key as well, is because of that climate. Plus the training atmosphere. You're not dealing with a cold wind, and you're not dealing with the cold as you are in Wisconsin, which makes it even more difficult, I think, because I've tried running in, you know, below freezing temperatures.
Yep.
It's not really all that much fun, and I don't think running, exercising, and doing that kind of those drills for football or any sport in the winter is very easy.
I agree with you on that one. Yeah, I've done training in both climates for both soccer and football, playing college sports up here in Wisconsin and high school sports down in Florida. It's the difference between training in the wintertime. It feels like you're being stabbed in the chest repeatedly by the cold weather anytime you run, while in Florida you're just like, I'm just really hot more than anything. And I never really experienced too cold of weather at all. I mean, I remember playing high school soccer in Florida because that's a winter sport, and that always blows people's mind. And up here in the north, it's like, wait a minute, you played high school soccer and football? They're like, yeah, how did that work? I'm like, oh, well, soccer's a winter sport in Florida. They're like, but how does that work? I'm like, well, it only gets down to like 40 or 50 degrees in the peak of winter time, so we can still play and not worry about freezing. We just put on a layer and call it a day, honestly.
You're absolutely right. I mean, and with Florida winters, which really aren't winters, they're
really
like cool
not.
periods.
There's no snow, there's no sleet, there's no hail. I mean, depending on, you get hail if it hurricanes, but that's a whole nother topic.
I was going to say, usually if you're getting hail, you got about a week's advance notice that hail was coming with that hurricane.
Yeah.
So you have no excuses. But yeah, I mean, like I said, it's fun down here. You get 1 week of cold, and that's really about it down here. And we just finished up the soccer state championships almost about 2 weeks ago.
Sure.
Right here in my backyard, and had a couple of local teams from this area playing. The Space Coast of Florida, which is Cape Canaveral, and I know a lot of our listeners know from the NASA days.
Yep.
I'm about 45 minutes away from NASA, so if you look up and down the strip where Cape Canaveral is, that's where the Space Coast is, and this is a hotbed for soccer, especially at the high school level. We've had multiple state champions. We've had back-to-back state champions. We've had men's and women's from the same school dominate their classifications as well. Plus now we're getting the Orlando City soccer B team that's going to be playing here locally in my area as well.
Okay.
So soccer is taking over just about as predominantly as football is. I don't know if it'll ever take over football, but right now they're getting pretty close to neck and neck here in the Space Coast.
Yeah, I'd agree with you on that one. It's always an interesting fact, though, too, from a recruiting standpoint. You always hear about the northern schools trying to recruit, kids from Florida. Oh, we got to get that running back from Florida, or we got to get that, that awesome goalkeeper from Florida or whatever. But I think, honestly, in my opinion, recruiting players from Florida to bring them up to the Midwest is kind of not the smartest recruiting move, honestly, because yes, you can get some high class athletes, but their body and their level of skills is totally different and accustomed to playing in different conditions than what you bring them into in the Midwest. And yes, I know there's success stories of kids, coming from Florida and going to different, Midwest schools and doing really well in college, but the climate change, though, is totally different. You take out the humidity, you add in the freezing cold or the dynamic freezing rain or even snow at times, and coaches are sitting there going, what the heck? This was a 4 or 5 star recruit that I brought in, and they can't seem to do anything in this cold weather, or, now that they've come to play for me. And I think, honestly, that some schools forget about that when they're trying to go after, that star athlete down in Florida.
Well, I guess I would say, Baxter, is that the way you would look at it is speed kills no matter what happens. If you're fast, you're going to be fast, when it's nice out.
Yes.
You're going to be faster when it's raining out. You might slip and fall, but you're going to be fast. I think the key is for a lot of those northern schools, and what you need to hit, and especially here Florida as well, every state needs to do its best job of recruiting its own players. Get the best athletes from your own state first, and then try and go get some of the best athletes from some of these other states. Florida does have the dynamic because we have so many high school athletes and so many guys that can go play at the next level. But like you said, it's a transition period. There's a lot of that go up north, but they don't last there very long because it's just too far away. They don't like the conditions, so they end up coming someplace a little bit closer to home and a little bit farther south. So it's a give and take, but with states and especially schools, the Division I colleges and even the D2s and D3s, you got to do the best job you can of recruiting within your state because, let's face it, your name is going to be the first name those kids see in that area. From Florida, I could throw a rock in the ocean, and there's not going to be anybody that knows what Wisconsin Lutheran College or Lakeland College or what any of these colleges are because they're not seeing these names because they're up in Wisconsin. Now, like a Florida Tech, people will know who that is, or another Gulf South Conference Division II football program.
Sure.
But you know what? In the recruiting process, you find out about these names, and then that happens. But ultimately, it's up to the kid. I think a lot of times, if it's up to the kid willing to work in the off season and willing to adapt to these changes, that's going to be the overall difference too, especially with these athletes. If they're willing to work and put in the body of work to get better, it doesn't matter what climate they're in, that is what's going to make them successful, and that's what's going to make the program better.
Overall, that's exactly what you want from a coaching perspective. Yeah, chatting with the executive producer for Sports Radio 1560 The Fan in Melbourne, Florida, Anthony Nachreiner here on the BG Sports Show. Now, Anthony, in your experience, switching gears just a little bit, going to the broadcast side of things now of high school sports, have you had the opportunity to call some pretty big games down there in Florida? That's correct, right?
Yes, I have. I've gotten to call pretty much every playoff game's big down here. You get sellout crowds. But yeah, we got to call some pretty big ones. Just recently, we called Vieira versus Lakeland, the Lakeland Dreadnoughts, which was a storied house program over the last decade. Great game, but just always getting great games. Also regional finals, and we had to call a state final between St. Thomas Aquinas and Vieira.
Oh, sure. Yep, I'm very familiar with St. Thomas Aquinas. Yeah, growing up down in that Naples, Florida area, we heard about St. Thomas all the time. We heard about Miami Heritage, I think, was another one. And then, American Heritage.
American Heritage, Booker T.
Yeah. You heard all about those schools.
South.
Yep, all those schools from like that Miami area. You're just like, you never ever wanted to deal with them. But those are the schools that you always would watch those highlight films for, and you'd see those up and coming Division I stars or NFL stars. Now, in your experience, Anthony, do you feel like people and fans are more into what happens at those bigger high school games than like maybe just a regular season college football game sometimes, or just college basketball game at times?
Well, I think it's because it's more localized. I actually would say yes. I think a lot of people, you could even say even high school basketball, if you got a team that's good enough, they're going to draw a big crowd. Everyone's going to come out to the game, and they're going to, we'll record the game on DVR if it's a big-time college
Sure,
game.
Yep.
But I think with high school, it's just more local. You feel a part of it. There's fan bases. I mean, I'll tell you what, when we went to the Citrus Bowl for the Vieira High School team that went to the 7A States Finals, we filled the lower bowl. We sold all the allowed tickets. We sold 5,000 Vieira Hawks fans. Now, granted, unfortunately, Vieira didn't come out on the winning end like everybody wanted, but still, you had 5,000 people on a December night come out to about an hour drive to the Citrus Bowl and support their high school team because, like I said, you don't get many opportunities to do regional final games or state final games or go very deep in the playoffs.
Yep, no, I'd agree with you on that one. Yeah, it's interesting, too. Playoff time, at least up here in the Milwaukee area, I got to experience a couple of different big games with some schools like Oconomowoc, and I also saw the powerhouse Arrowhead as well for many years. They did they had a huge storied year this year. Franklin School as well. High school is another big one. So you see those thousands of people come out for those big game rivalries, and even just, high school football and even high school basketball as well. People love to come out to those games and keep up with what's going on in the high school scene. Well, Anthony, it's been a pleasure chatting with you. Again, thank you for taking the time today to join us here on the BG Sports Show.
Baxter, always a pleasure to have it's always fun to have me on, man. I appreciate it, and like I said, I always appreciate you inviting me on. It's always a blast.
Absolutely. We'll have to have you back again in the near future.
You got it, man. Anytime.
All right. That is the executive producer for Sports Radio 1560 The Fan in Melbourne, Florida, Anthony Nachreiner, here on the BG Sports Show. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we've got more exciting sports action for you. Don't touch that dial. Welcome back to the BG Sports Show, presented by Sports Radio America. I'm your host, Baxter Colburn. As we wrap things up here on the BG Sports Show, I've got to take a moment to throw a little bit of a hi, hey, hello out there to the soccer world. The Copa America draw happening yesterday in New York City. The Copa America, for those of you that don't know, is kind of like the mini World Cup for North and South, the Americas, basically, North and Central and South America there, as they say. There are 16 teams that will be battling it out for the 100th anniversary of Copa America, as they call it. 32 matches being played over 10 cities, and this is the first time in tournament history that the US of A has hosted it outside of South America. So you look at it, Uruguay comes into this tournament with the most Copa America wins with 15. Argentina has 14. Brazil has 8, and then it kind of all trickles down after that. The U.S. has never won it, and now here's the fun part about it, though. The United States, they get drawn into a very interesting group. There are 4 total groups, obviously, of 4 teams, because that's how 16 works. Yeah, I was homeschooled. I know my math tables. The United States will be playing against Colombia, Costa Rica, and Paraguay. In Group B, you have Brazil, Ecuador, Haiti, and Peru. Group C, you have Mexico, Uruguay, Jamaica, and Venezuela. And Group D is Argentina, Chile, Panama, and Bolivia as well. The U.S. is pegged as an early favorite to emerge from their group. Whether or not that actually happens, obviously, you don't ever know until tournament time. The tournament does kick off, though, this summer. It starts in June. Go and check it out. See, maybe if your city or a city near you is hosting. I know Chicago's got a USA game. I'm definitely going to try to get down for that. I know Orlando, I think, has a couple of games. Seattle, Texas, New Jersey, all those places. So go check it out. Copa America coming to a city near you. We got to wrap things up here on the BG Sports Show. Special thanks to everybody that joined us. We had author Dan Epstein join us of Stars and Stripes. Go and check out his book on Amazon and on Barnes & Noble. Bleacher Report's David Kenyon joined us today talking about the NFL Combine. Anthony Nachreiner from 1560 The Fan down in Melbourne, Florida, joined us to talk about high school sports. And Jayda Hoerrs, hockey player from Concordia, Wisconsin, joined the program as well to talk about the end of an era of her college hockey career. I'm Baxter Colburn. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you all again on Thursday from 1 to 2 p.m. Central Time, live right here on Spreaker.com, or from 4 to 6 p.m. on Sports Radio America. Find us on Facebook, The BG Sports Show, or on Twitter at BG Sports Show at Baxter Colburn. Have a great rest of your day, guys, and we'll see you on Thursday.